Okay, thank you. So my name is Jessica Jurdy, and I work for Student Diversity and Inclusion Services.
And I'm Brad Pullis. I work with Jessica in SDIS.
And we are going to talk to you today about finding your voice, and we're going to start with a video.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in a 1968 speech where he reflects upon the civil rights movement, states, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." As a teacher, I've internalized this message. Every day all around us, we see the consequences of silence manifest themselves in the form of discrimination, violence, genocide, and war. In the classroom, I challenge my students to explore the silences in their own lives through poetry. We work together to fill those spaces, to recognize them, to name them, to understand that they don't have to be sources of shame. In an effort to create a culture within my classroom where students feel safe sharing the intimacies of their own silences, I have 4 core principles posted on the board that sits in the front of my class, which every student signs at the beginning of the year. Read critically, write consciously, speak clearly, tell your truth. I find myself thinking a lot about that last point, tell your truth. And I realized that if I was going to ask my students to speak up, I was going to have to tell my truth and be honest with them about the times where I failed to do so. So I tell them that growing up as a kid in a Catholic family in New Orleans, during Lent, I was always taught that the most meaningful thing one could do was to give something up. Sacrifice something you typically indulge in to prove to God you understand His sanctity. I've given up soda, McDonald's, French fries, French kisses, and everything in between. But one year, I gave up speaking. Figured the most valuable thing I could sacrifice was my own voice, but it was like I hadn't realized that I had given that up a long time ago. I had spent so much of my life telling people the things they wanted to hear instead of the things they needed to. Told myself I wasn't meant to be anyone's conscience because I still had to figure out being my own, so sometimes I just wouldn't say anything, appeasing ignorance with my silence, unaware that validation doesn't need words to endorse its existence. When Christian was beat up for being gay, I put my hands in my pocket and walked with my head down as if I didn't even notice. Couldn't use my locker for weeks because the bolt on the lock reminded me of the one I had put on my lips when the homeless man on the corner looked at me with eyes up, merely searching for an affirmation that he was worth seeing. I was more concerned with touching the screen of my Apple than actually feeding him one. When the woman at the fundraising gala said, "I'm so proud of you. It must be so hard teaching those poor, unintelligent kids," I bit my lip because apparently we needed her money more than my students needed their dignity. We spend so much time listening to the things people are saying that we rarely pay attention to the things they don't. Silence is the residue of fear. It is feeling your flaws gut-wrench guillotine your tongue. It is the air retreating from your chest because it doesn't feel safe in your lungs. Silence is Rwandan genocide. Silence is Katrina. It is what you hear when there aren't enough body bags left. It is the sound after the noose is already tied. It is charring. It is chains. It is privilege. It is pain. There is no time to pick your battles when your battles have already picked you. I will not let silence wrap itself around my indecision. I will tell Christian that he is a lion, a sanctuary of bravery and brilliance. I will ask that homeless man what his name is and how his day was, because sometimes all people want to be is human. I will tell that woman that my students can talk about transcendentalism like their last name was Thoreau, and just because you watch one episode of The Wire doesn't mean you know anything about my kids. So this year, instead of giving something up, I will live every day as if there were a microphone tucked under my tongue, a stage on the underside of my inhibition. Because who has to have a soapbox when all you've ever needed is your voice? Thank you.
All right, so pretty good video. What we want everybody to do now is take out your phones, and we have a question up at the top of the screen here that we want you to consider as you let that video sink in. And the question reads, what is a cause that you are passionate about? So we want you to take a second, think about it, and then text your answer to Jessica GJERD848, and we do recommend capital letters on those, to 37607. And I forgot to mention my disclaimer last time, your standard text messaging rates will apply. So send your answers, and then they'll start to show up on the screen as you start to send those in. So we ask that you please take this seriously and consider a cause that you're really passionate about, and they'll start to show up.
While you're plugging all that into your phone, also mention that when you move in during welcome days, Clint Smith, the man in the video you just watched, will be on campus. He'll be here to do a Q&A and a lecture, and then later on that evening he'll do a slam poetry performance with a couple of our students. So you'll want to look out for that when you come back. First one, hunger. Environmental protection, Special Olympics. The Black Lives Matter movement. Stopping the wars in the Middle East and helping refugees. Eating disorders, not only for women, sustainable energy. Bringing joy to others. Equal rights for every human being, respect. Okay, so feel free to continue texting in your responses. They'll populate on the screen, but I'm going to move to a different slide and we'll come back, okay?
All right, so the next thing we want you to do is pair up with the person next to you, or maybe if there's an odd number, pair up or make a group of 3. And consider the question here. Can you think about a time that you felt like you had really found your voice, and what did that feel or look like? So keep in mind the video that we just watched and some of what Clint was talking about, and think about when you have really seen that impact your own lives. So get together with your groups and take a couple minutes to discuss. Okay. So you all had a session earlier today on the common good, correct? Right? So one of the things that we wanted to do with our session was kind of draw that idea of the all for the common good and being students for the common good and individuals for the common good to finding your voice and some of these issues that you're passionate about, right? Because as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, if we are silent, for a long time about things that really matter, challenging stuff can come up and challenging things can happen. So let's lift our voices to really, magnify these issues and talk about them so that we can kind of move on and be better leaders and educate ourselves and learn more about these topics, right? And one of the ways that you can do that is by engaging with our office, Student Diversity and Inclusion Services. So we will click forward and show you a little video that kind of highlights a little bit of our office and some of the things that we offer, okay?
On a chilly Friday night in February, these students were the hottest seats on campus.
They're going to perform what they've written, their art, what they've written with their souls and their blood and their spirit.
The Poetry Slam is hosted by the Student Diversity and Inclusion Services Office,
8.6.
or SDIS for short, during Black History Month, to empower the poet and enlighten the audience.
I can still hide behind my whiteness, blend in with the color of my skin, because as long as they don't know, I can pass as one of them.
Amira Warren Yerby was still writing lines up until she took the stage.
I was hella nervous.
She recited a poem she wrote for her unborn children.
We don't want you to fly. We never fly. You can still walk with your head high.
She's discovering that sometimes as a young person, it's nice just to be heard.
All about giving someone a voice. I think that more things like this should happen on campus.
They already are. SDIS throws school year-long events centered on encouraging students to be their authentic selves.
No more K. Dot. My mother had named me Kendrick.
Hip-hop enthusiast and St. Thomas student James Might presents his research on artist Kendrick Lamar at a recent culture stew,
Typically, most hip-hop artists are black.
where the St. Thomas community comes together to talk social justice while participants slurp on stew.
SCIS does a great job of allowing students at St. Thomas to present themselves in front of their peers, and it's safe.
SDIS promotes programs where everyone is free to share.
We all crave moments where we can really express who we are, and that's a venue that it's done freely.
That is also one of the main attractions of Purple Bench Conversations, held each Friday afternoon inside the SDIS office. This week's topic is centered around feelings toward law enforcement.
To have an event where people can come in and give their opinions and talk about it and share how they're feeling about it was just something that I really needed.
Jada Pound's needs were fulfilled by listening and learning.
How we talked about the police force and the police tasks and the different police structures across the world.
Another participant, Emily Eberspacher, put herself in others' shoes and walked away with a greater understanding of some of her privileges.
Helps me appreciate the blessings that I have and also be able to better understand and feel compassion towards people who are different than me.
Compassion for others is also what Nate Holopchinsky takes away from an experience with the SDIS J-Term Book Club.
And like which one of them is like more honest?
Reading the short and tragic life of Robert Pease, a true story about a black man who grew up in the ghettos of New Jersey and went on to college at Yale University.
It was a great book because it was something I knew very little bit about, but it gave me a perspective that I previously may never have had.
Student facilitator Xander Sadwa says the participants often leave the weekly meetups with a better understanding of themselves and the world we live in.
Because we're just looking at political things.
I also feel like it would be life-changing for a lot of students, even ones that, for instance, like me, that relate to the book and understand what it's trying to say in a lot of ways, to communicate that to someone who might not see it as well.
The icing on the cake for book club members each year is when SDIS invites the author of the book to appear in person at the university.
Fulfill all of his dreams and all the dreams other people had for him.
A much lighter conversation is taking place between students Mazer Muhammad and Yusuf Mahmoud inside the Ark. The b-ball-loving guys want to be doctors and share the same faith. Mazer, though, is an upperclassman, giving him 2 years of experience navigating college, classes, and extracurriculars. SDIS paired the two as part of the Linkages program.
Came on campus figuring out where can I get a mentor, you know? And then SDIS goes, linkages, mentor program.
Yeah, mentor, it's kind of like, have like a child.
Mazer jokes, but he has taken his mentor role seriously.
I mean, he was like, Mazer, like, you know, look at my schedule and stuff like that. I was like, sure. He made a legend. He made a key for me, right? Colors, like blue for like classes, green for work, you know? It like made it so colorful, and in that way, I felt way more organized. I felt like I had my routine down.
It's clear the mentorship is turning into a lifelong friendship. And whether you want to participate in large group discussions or enjoy more intimate talks about current events or social issues, SDIS provides a safe and welcoming environment where students can be themselves and know their voices matter. You're invited to take that first step and visit their office.
It's a very welcoming place, a place to come and be involved in programs, and we have great staff there that love getting to those students.
It's definitely a home for me when I feel like I need to get away from the typical culture that I St. Thomas. I can just go and write in SDS, listen to some jazz music, and see all of my friends, and just kind of chill and be myself. And I think everyone needs that sense of community.
Amira's community awarded her first place at the recent Poetry Slam.
Make some noise for Amira!
She won $150 and pride in sharing her unique college experience.
So SDS definitely is like keeping students here, and all the events are very important, and I don't know what I would do without SDS.
Okay, so great promo piece for us. But also a good preview for you to see what events look like when you come to campus in the fall. There are large events that will have big speakers. There are more intimate conversations where you can really get to know people. But our office tries to provide a variety of those opportunities for you and to engage in the kind of topics like Brad was saying that will serve towards the common good. The best way to keep up with those events and up with us is on social media. So our handle is at U of St. Thomas STIS. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and Periscope. So if you can't make it to an event, occasionally we'll live stream them and you can watch it for the next 24 hours. But this is going to be the easiest way to keep up with us.
Yes. Any questions from anybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
What's your favorite event that you've ever done?
Oh,
Or been to?
favorite event? You go up first.
I think probably our first Slam Poetry Week, which is multiple events, so it's kind of cheating, but it's a relatively new thing that we started doing, and students have loved it, and we get a ton of awesome performers, and we also bring in professional slam poets, and it's just been, I think, a really cool way for students to express themselves, which is something that I enjoy a lot.
Should I go quick? So my favorite one was the one that you saw in there where James Might was kind of breaking down the Kendrick Lamar's album. I'm a hip hop fan, so that was really cool. Yeah.
Can anyone participate in the slam poetry?
Absolutely, yep. Yeah, we encourage you to. It's really fun. And we give out a lot of money.
Yeah, really good prizes. Any other questions?
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time.